You're coding, right? All right.
Yeah.
All right.
That's what we're going to talk about today, right?
I'm really excited for that.
Okay.
All right. So that's perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and start. Okay. So thank you, everyone, for being here today. And I'm just going to quickly introduce myself again. My name is Ahmed Al-Arabi, and I am the co-president of the Executive Committee at Texas A&M Health Postdoctoral Association. And really, I would like to welcome you to our fourth seminar for this year. I would like to start with a couple of announcements before I introduce my guest today. Now, first of all, the Postdoctoral Travel Award is now open for applicants, and it's due on May 18. So the winner will be announced in June, and all the details of the award will be sent through our PDA communication email after the seminar. And also you can find all the details on the PDA Travel Award webpage. So you're welcome to apply for that. We also would like to announce that the BDA is also offering a postdoctoral professional development award, which is gonna also be due on May 18. So, I mean, to apply for this award, you can send your CV, description of your current position, and your research goal, and how you're gonna utilize this fund to tamu.hsc.bda@gmail.com. Of course, the detail of the award will be sent also through the BDA communication email. And now all the announcements are out of the way. I'm really so excited today to have the opportunity to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Hector Olvera. Dr. Olvera is a professor and senior associate dean of research of the School of Nursing at Oregon Health and Science University. He's also a Harvard Fellow at the GDB Environmental Health Fellowship Program. Dr. Olvera's main research focuses on understanding the combined role of psychosocial stress and environmental factors such as air pollution in the connection between low socioeconomic status and the health outcome across lifespan. And he is well published in this area. Dr. Olvera founded the Behavioral Research Lab in University of Texas at El Paso, and he also served a different leadership role. Just to name few, he served as the co-director of the Interdisciplinary Health PhD program at UTEP. He also serves at the Executive Advisory Board for the PhD program in the Environmental Science and Engineering at UTEP also. Now, Dr. Olvera also founded the Alpha Youth Leadership Academy in collaboration with the Housing Authority at the city of El Paso. And through the academy, of course, Dr. Olvera was able to connect UTEP students with at-risk youth to deliver structured curricula and hands-on opportunity to help develop the skills necessary to live happily, healthy, and self-sufficient life. One final note is that Dr. Olvera is also a fascinating individual, and we are really grateful for his presence among us today. And without any further ado, so please join me. Welcome, Dr. Olvera. So, Dr. Olvera, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ahmed. Can everybody hear me okay? Because I'm at a Starbucks for it's a long story how I ended up here this morning, but I just want to make sure that everybody listens to me okay. So can you raise your hand if you can hear me well? Okay, now I'm concerned because I only saw one hand. Okay, good. Thank you for that. Okay, so first of all, thank you, Ahmed, for the invitation. Thank you for that introduction. Let me share my screen. Okay, so quickly, some important things to clarify. Ahmed was very generous with his introduction, but I think the most important thing to highlight here is that all the cool things that he said, which I don't know how cool they are, when you put them in context, but I survived 7 years of postdoc. So I think that's what you should all care about, right? That there's hope after being a postdoc, and I'm living proof of that. So I think that would be the most important thing to highlight in that introduction, that at one point in my life I was in your place. In my case, I was an international student, an international postdoc, and I was blessed to find a way to stay and have an academic career. So I think that's what I really want to highlight, and that's sort of where the perspective for today's presentation comes from. It doesn't come from science. We can always talk about that, but when I thought about what I could share with a group of postdocs, I felt that I had more fundamental knowledge and know-how and just experience from my own experience of how to navigate academia. Of course, it's not the only way. I'm not gonna preach to you. I'm not gonna prescribe anything. The goal for today for me is to share my perspective as an international scientist in a STEM field, because I was trained as an engineer, by the way, and how to navigate academia from my own perspective. So my hope is that I'm going to share some. I don't think you have ever heard anything like what I'm going to say today. I'm going to use science, or at least a scientific framework, to explain ideas of how to navigate academia. I mean, think about it. That's kind of odd. It shouldn't be, right? I mean, we should use science for everything. We're scientists, but rarely we separate those things, right? So we use scientific thinking for our science, but when it comes to our professional development and our career development, we don't rely on science that much. Like, we don't go and study behavioral science and see what they know and how can we apply that to advance our academic careers. Think about it. It's weird, but it's true. And I'm fascinated by this because then now you see all these smart people doing all these dumb things. I'm sorry, because I'm pretty sure there's noise in the back, and I don't know how to block it. But the point is that, again, you probably know ways. I mean, you have your ideas on how you're going to develop your career. And what I want to do today is expand that perspective, use a scientific background to argue my advice to all of you. So again, I hope all of this becomes very useful to all of you. And I really picked the worst hour here at this Starbucks. Okay, so what are the aims today? So I'm going to share my personal perspective, and I think you'll get some tips out of it, of what I think people could develop a successful and fulfilling, keyword fulfilling career in academia. And I'm really want to focus on the happiness part of this. Because I have mentors like Ahmed said, from Ivy League schools that are way smarter than me and are extraordinary scientists and academics, but they seem, some of them, not all of them, seem miserable to me. Actually, I was honored to be invited to apply to a position at the Department of Environmental Health at the School of Public Health at Harvard, and I declined. I declined to apply because I have a 14-year-old daughter that I love with all my heart, and I knew that if I tried to become a tenured professor at Harvard, my entire life needed to be dedicated to that. And as important as my sciences and my academic career is not that important. So again, I think being successful is important, but I hope that for some of you, if not most of you, being happy, it's also an important part of your plan as you progress. So I'm going to highlight both of those things. So let's start with the obvious stuff. These are things that you should already know or be learning about, and these are probably the things that you're almost always worried about on how to advance your career, how to make your how to make it there. And these are sort of 4 lines of thinking, right? Things you need to get good at, really good at. One is on the science, the other one is on marketing, the other one's on networking, and the other one is on career planning. This is obvious stuff, but I'm just gonna mention some things, because remember, I'm an associate dean of research, so my job is pretty much my entire day talking to early career scientists and faculty on how to develop their research career. So I put a lot of thought into it, and this is usually the stuff that I'm talking to. Now on science, what do I mean by that? Well, critical thinking, right? You need good questions. I mean, I sometimes run into people, including myself a few years ago, and they're always like worried, like, well, I don't want to collaborate with people because they're going to steal my idea, or or you're very secretive with your idea and who you share it with. It maybe, and don't get me wrong, you should be. And there's horrible things happen in academia every day. People do steal your ideas. But I remember when I told my mentor, one of my mentors, the most influential one, I told him how I was anxious about sharing ideas and stuff like that. And he said, Hector, if you only have one idea, you probably shouldn't be a scientist, you know? And of course, he wasn't not suggesting for me to be careless, but he was saying, honestly, yeah, if you only have one, you're betting your entire career on one, that's a bad sign. And I agree with him. That you should have enough of them to be throwing them around, right? So the critical thinking, the curiosity at the very, very top. The next part on the scientific part has to do with the method, right? You need to be good at study design, and you need to be good at statistical analysis. And some of us in STEM related careers, we're obsessed with that. We spend a lot of time training for statistics, and we want me. I myself, again, I'm talking about myself. I invested way too much time, way too much money becoming not even good, decent at statistical analysis. You cannot believe how many courses I haven't taken after graduating from my PhD. And now I reflect on it, and it was such a waste of time. I think, again, we need to be good at design, at coming up with good questions, designing good studies, and then, of course, being able to analyze them. But I don't know why in school and in universities, we overemphasize that part of the training. And I think we end up spending way too much time in it. So honestly, those things are not even the most important. I think they're a given. You need to have questions. You need to be decent at study design and method. And if that's a strength of yours, good for you. So that's what's gonna put you in the team. But I think the other two things, and the things I'm going to talk on the rest of the presentation, might be even more influential to your success and your fulfillment. Let me tell you why real quick, because I'm not going to come back to this. The reason is that nowadays most work is interdisciplinary, and at the very least, you can engage people that are awesome at study design and that are awesome at statistics. So I realized that since I know that I'm not going to do work on my own, I should not spend time on that. Rather, I should build teams, strong relationships with good methodologists, with good biostatisticians, and then dedicate myself to develop my strengths. Now, if those are your strengths, of course, develop them, and then you're the one helping people like me. But the point is, as important as it is the science, sadly, because we're human, it's not the most important thing to your success. We all know somebody that is successful, that we all wonder, how the hell did this idiot, is doing that well? I mean, how the hell is this idiot getting funded? Which proves you it's not always the science. So again, I'm not undermining the science, but you need to be a well-rounded scientist, academic, to really make it in this field. So don't neglect the other things. You don't need to be outstanding in every scientific aspect, because the goal is for you to surround yourself with people that have those capacities. Marketing, very simple. Writing and oral presentation. The writing part, I think everybody recognizes that. Not everybody's good at it, but everybody recognizes that ultimately a successful scientist in the United States in today's age is number one, a writer. We're writing articles, we're writing proposals. If you're pipetting or doing something in the lab, you're not there yet, right? Meaning you have your PIs and look at what they're doing. They're writing every damn day, right? So if you're not good at writing, you actually, I would argue, if you have to choose between a writing workshop and a statistics workshop, writing, no brainer. Now you need to be 10 times a better writer than you are a biostatistician. 10 times easily. Because somebody can analyze the data for you. Somebody can help you design your study. No one is going to write your proposal for you. No one. That's just something you cannot delegate. The papers, when you become awesome and you become senior author, that could happen. But even if the papers are coming from your team, you want to publish in good journals, So you're gonna want to be a good writer, and even if you're somebody else, you're mentoring somebody else, you cannot mentor a good writer if you're not a good writer yourself. So writing, very tough. Now, writing, of course, can be perceived as part of the scientific opinion from a dissemination perspective, and that's obvious, but that's not what I'm talking here. I'm talking writing here as marketing, right? If you think strategically about your plan, you need to be able to sell your ideas. So it's not just about writing a proposal or a paper that is flawless in describing robust methods. You know, the best methods, the best analysis, the best draft. You know, in order for you to be genuinely successful and influential scientist, you really need to um, write persuasively. I mean, I mean, we have all done literature reviews. We all read articles for a living, and I mean, one out of every 100 articles that we read are really a page turner. Those articles do exist. The ones that you just read again, that you understand, that you cite, that are like these pivotal papers within a field. Uh, Sometimes, yes, they are that good because the science in them is good, but sometimes it's just because they're clear and understandable. So you can for the same type of analysis, for the same study, you can improve the quality of your paper, the journal you publish in, not by making the study better, just by writing better. And I have proved that to myself. I have the journal my team is publishing in. It's progressively improving, and I don't think it's improving at the rate that my science is improving. It's improving at the rate that my writing skills are improving. Just to give you a sense, again, writing, networking. I told you right now, in order for you to make it, you're going to need to make teams. And even if people are not in your teams, but you have friends that are biostatisticians, you have friends, and keyword friends, not acquaintances, not colleagues, not people that you know that know how to do it, like actual friends, right? That can help you, that you drink coffee and beer or whatever it is that you drink with them and share ideas. Then you have support, right? If you can go to a friend and be vulnerable and say, hey, I'm designing this study and I don't have the slightest damn clue on how to design a study, right? And you can be that honest. Imagine if this person is an expert and you can be that honest. Because think about how much we lose when we cannot be honest and vulnerable, right? And we live in academia and society that is that it feels very unforgiving to them. So we always have to present ourselves like we always know what we're doing, like we always like. And so the problem with that is that when you actually genuinely need help, it's really hard to ask for the help that you need in a very clear way, because asking for the help in a very clear way means becoming yourself vulnerable and saying, hey, I don't have a clue how to do that. I myself, I'm very good at doing that. I'm good at knowing what I don't know and accepting it. And that's what the talk is actually going to be about. But the point is, you want friends, you want to make friends, and I'm going to talk more about that. And then career planning, right? It's amazing how very little most scientists put into actually planning their career. Like they just think, oh, I'm going to write papers, I'm going to write proposals, and we write them as we go. You know, we crunch the data. Oh, that's a good paper. Let's write that one. And then an RFA comes out. Hey, I could do that. Hey, let's respond to that. And then think about it. Let's say you do become successful. You get R1. These things are 5 years, right? Imagine if you get funded for the wrong one. And by wrong, I mean one you really don't care about the science. You wrote it because you could, because it was in front of you, because the method, the instrument was in front of you. You write it, you get it. Guess what? Now your career goes in that direction, because your next R1 is probably going to be linked to that one, because it's more likely that you get a renewal, that you get a new one, right? And how many R1s do you think you're going to fit into your career? Think about it. These things are 5 years, right? So, I mean, if you're here at 30, we're talking 6. You don't have to that many. Yeah, of course, there's these people that have, multiple and parallel and stuff. But that's not the norm, right? And you're going to make a career if you just have a sequence of them. So even getting the wrong one, I know when we're postdocs, I mean, I'll take it. I mean, I'll study, how ants eat cheese if somebody pays me. I mean, I get it. But you can get both. You can be strategic and really plan out your career, what papers you want to publish, what grants you want to get, and you increase your chance, interestingly, of getting those grants in your strategic. But you need to think upfront. And the problem is that once we get in this sort of rat race, we don't have time to step back. We just have to publish the next one. We just have to write the next respond to the next survey. And that's incredibly dangerous. And even if you're successful that way, you're going to be miserable. So early as you can, I start with my PhD students. I have them strategically design their careers, and specifically the first 5 years after their graduation. They should come out of my program with at least an R03 proposal in the right field, in the right, sending them in the right direction. Because and you all know it because you're right there. And once you get there and you don't have a plan, it feels like you just want to get whatever's around you just to survive, to stay there. And I get it. I mean, probably a lot of us have kids that we need to feed, and we don't have the luxury to be strategic. At least it feels like that sometimes. Well, you need to push as much as you can. I'm in nursing. Half of the reason is because I was acting exactly the way that I told you. I became lucky because it became a very rewarding career, but I saw an opportunity and I just took it. You know, again, I was lucky. I could have been regretting it. I'm not, but I could have. So again, you need to be careful. You want to be strategic. And by the way, everything I just said is like a workshop. I could spend an hour just talking about each of these points, but I hope you get a sense that again, these are the obvious stuff. You need to be a good scientist, good thinking, good questions. You need to be a good writer, good presenter. You know, you want it to be known. You want to be known for the right stuff. You want to network. You want to have colleagues. You want to have partners. But ultimately, you want to have friends. You want to build genuine relationships with people around you so that you can get very good help and you can be vulnerable and honest with people so that the help really is the help you're looking for. And then, of course, you want to be strategic. You want to learn about strategic planning. Again, all of you are very smart people. You got PhDs. You should be able to figure this one out. Now, on happiness. Here's where I'm going to spend the most time. How much time do I have left, Ahmed? Because I think I went over my time already. Okay, so on happiness, I'm going to use an evolutionary perspective. I'm going to go sideways for a little moment. I'm going to talk about human behavior. I'm obsessed with human behavior. I'm going to post some ideas. I'm going to create a framework, and then I'm going to bring it all back to academia. So real quick, because I suspect I'm already behind on time. Yeah, okay, I think I'm okay. So an evolutionary perspective, I like to think about behavior from an evolutionary perspective. Like, how do we evolve to behave that we did? I'm a big fan of evolution. I hope all of you are as well as scientists. But when I think about humans, I always think about, hey, we were apes like a minute ago from an evolutionary perspective. So I love, biological anthropology. I love my favorite behavioral book is called Behave by Robert Sapolsky, where he outlines, human behavior. I think it's the best summary of human behavior from a scientific perspective, and he starts from an evolutionary perspective. So I'm going to use a lot of that framework today to talk about human behavior. And if you're not a big fan of evolution, that's fine. Just bear with me. I'm pretty sure you can translate some of the comments I'm going to make to whatever other framework you feel more comfortable with. So just give me the benefit of the doubt for a second. So fundamental, at the very fundamental level, human behavior is about survival and reproduction, right? If you look at, and not just human, you're the mammal behavior. This is stick with mammals. The purpose of life, even at a unicellular level, is ultimately to reproduce, to create another cell to pass on the DNA. Therefore, survival from an external perspective appears that it's the purpose of life, right? But it's really reproduction. And this is still debatable. Natural biologists are still discussing this, but we're somewhere there. Either the purpose of life is to reproduce or the purpose of life is to survive. I think that the purpose of life is to reproduce, the replication of DNA. Therefore, survival is a secondary, obvious purpose because we need to survive long enough to procreate. So the organisms that evolved to be more able to survive were the ones that passed down their genes, and therefore evolutionary mechanisms are driven by the aptitude, the fitness to survive and procreate. Again, all of this is sort of biology 101. But from that perspective, behavior, the movement of organisms, right, the doing of living organisms can be reduced to its two fundamental laws, very fundamental things. One, we're either approaching something or we are either avoiding something. If you look at me, I know that we all like to think ourselves as super civilized, sophisticated, PhD educated individuals. But the reality is that we're humans first, we're scientists second, and we're 99.9999998, and then 0.01 humans, and then a little fraction of that scientists. So we are ultimately these sort of biological entities that behave very similar to our non-human primate ancestors. The point is, fundamental human behavior is either approach or avoid. I mean, you get hungry, what do? You seek food, you approach it, right? You see a tiger, you get fear, it's a threat to your life, you avoid it, right? You don't want to touch hot things because you're going to get burnt, you avoid them, right? Everything we tell our kids are approach or avoid. I mean, go to school, approach your degree, do good at sports because you need to get a scholarship. Everything's about approaching, get good stuff, things that are going to promote your survival. That's how we educate our kids. And then we tell them to avoid, right? They don't smoke, don't do drugs, don't hang out with the wrong kids. Like everything, it's either an approach behavior or an avoidance behavior. And again, these are driven by survival mechanisms, right? So we everything that's gonna kill you, don't do it. Don't smoke, don't drink, don't do anything that is gonna kill you, and do everything that is gonna make you survive. Do exercise, stay healthy, don't eat bacon, so on and so forth. So approach a behavior that is gonna promote survival and avoid behavior that is a threat to survival. And even as organisms as sophisticated as PhDs, we're still just doing that, right? Meaning the reason we decided for a scientific career, I know that we're all driven by the curiosity, but we're more interested in the checks. That's why we're here in this group, right? Because we need a job. We love doing science, but we're not going to do it for free. So ultimately, it comes back to that survival mechanism. As important as science is, it's secondary to our primary needs. Now, feelings and emotions, humans, we develop feelings and emotions as promoters of our behavior. If we didn't have feelings or emotions, we wouldn't do anything. Feelings and emotions are the mediators of the behavior, right? So you are hungry, that's pain, and that moves you. If you wouldn't get hungry, you wouldn't eat, we would die, right? If you were an organism, 4 million years ago, in the human evolutionary line, and for some weird reason you were a human that did not evolve with hunger or mutated that behavior away, you probably would die, didn't pass your genes, and you got taken out of the gene pool.
Hector, I'm sorry about the interruption, but some of the audience asking that the background noises it might be controlled from the setting. There might be some kind of option that lower the background noise if you.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Somebody sort of walk me.
So
audio settings, suppress background low. Okay. The other thing I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna move. Give me a second.
No problem. Sorry about that.
No problem. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's fine.
Give me 1 second. Know how much my battery is going to last. Let's put it to a test. Hopefully not for me to finish.
All right, Hector. I think it's much better now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had some neighbors that were competing with me. So okay, can you hear me there better?
Yes, we can hear you clearly. Go ahead.
Okay. So I was there on happiness, right? So again, I was saying that from an evolutionary perspective, we're driven primarily by survival and reproduction, and all the behaviors that promote survival or that we perceive that promote survival produce positive feelings. So happiness and pleasure, pleasure would be the feeling, happiness would be the emotion, are met there. We evolve those feelings to incentivize humans to move, to do something. So we have also negative feelings and negative emotions, right? So we have pain as a feeling, we have sadness as an emotion, and fear as an emotion, and those also move us. So we avoid things that we are afraid of, and we are afraid of things that cause pain, right? So feeling, emotion, behavior, right? Again, if you were not afraid of things, and we all have a child or a little children in our life that is less afraid than that it should be, and we see this child taking all these risks, and we wonder why is this kid not afraid of a lot of this stuff, right? Some of us, again, we evolve to have more fear than others, but again, it doesn't take long if you start observing humans to recognize that negative emotions, negative feelings like fear and pain, and positive ones like pleasure and happiness move us, and they move us by promoting approach and avoid behavior. Very fundamental. Of course, humans now we evolve. We have a lot of complexities now. We have complex social structures. But if you look closely at humans, uh, it all can be uh, taken apart down to this fundamental level. And I know we like to think that we're more sophisticated than we are. Sadly, we're not. So again, that's sort of a little evolutionary framework of behavior. Now, social behavior, right? This is important because this is why I want to talk about sort of academia, because it's a social little network. Social behavior, it also evolved the same way. So for humans across our evolutionary timeline, because we were the apex predator ourselves, our biggest threat to survival was other humans. That's still the case today. The biggest threat to our survival is other humans. Um, and again, it's not the same as 3 million years ago, where it was probably other apes, fighting for food, or neighbors from the village next uh, down the road fighting for resources. But now, it's our colleagues, right? It's our peer support group. It's our peer reviewers. It's the people in our postdoc group. The people in our university, the faculty in our department, so on and so forth. Or again, just our real life neighbors. And again, based on these fundamental pieces of behavior from a social perspective, social behaviors have become at the very top of the priority in human life. We care a lot about our human our social interactions, and what we perceive as valuable are the following ideas: acceptance, connectedness, attachment, and status. All of them are associated with our survival, right? If we're part of a group and we are rejected, that causes pain. Nobody, I mean, it's proved. You can go to science, look at social rejection experiments. You're going to find thousands of articles. You can read them all. But the bottom line is humans, we don't like to be rejected. We feel pain when we feel rejected. And the reason we feel pain is because being rejected is not a good thing for your survival. If you were that ape that was rejected from their community, the likelihood that you were going to die, and your spouse is going to die, and your kids are going to die, it was super high. So we associate being rejected with the threat of our own lives. And we still perceive that. So we approach acceptance, we avoid rejection. Connectedness is one level up, right? So first acceptance, you get into the group. That is the once you're in the group, you're connected to a few people within the group, right? Uh, because again, you need to do all right, and we see this in every little social community that is formed, right? You go to a new university, the first thing you want to do is be part of, the community, and then once you're in it, you start making subgroups, right? You start connecting with some people. That that goes all the way back to our ape ancestors. We get connected because we need allies within our own social network. We need to be first accepted to the big network, and then we need allies. Then we need attachment. Attachment goes beyond connection. It's not just colleagues and acquaintances and sort of little negotiations of support, which is what we're seeking. Attachment is one level up, right? Meaning it's like this lifelong attachment thing with that we actually now feel towards another social entity in our social community, and the commitment for support becomes more unconditional. And now you can rely on this person for even more demanding support, right? And we see it in human societies, we see it in climate societies as well. And then, of course, within primates, and we are primates, status is a big deal, right? So in an ape world, the alpha male is first, and then beta, and then gamma, and then all the way down, to omega. It's that structure in some ape communities. and the survival of the spouse and the survival or the mate and the survival of the offspring it's structured by social status. So it's not a surprise that humans were obsessed with social status. The other reason that social status is so important is because when the higher up we are, the less reliance we need on others. So the higher status you have in a primate community, the less you need to be accepted. Like you're the one that accepts others, right? The level of connectedness is higher, right? Everybody wants to connect with you. And that's why we feel so like proud when we meet, the coolest professor in our field when we went to the conference. That's why we take the selfie. That's why we show it to people. Like this guy has 2 legs and 2 arms, just like any of us. Why the hell do we care? Right? Because you wrote a paper on whatever the hell you think is important. Bullshit. It's not the paper, it's the status that we care. And that's just human nature 101, right? We care about all these things. And then just being associated with status, sort of, we feel that erases our own status. That's why we need to publish it, right? Because if you took the picture and you don't show it to anyone, then what was the point? It's useless, right? Which is the proof that it's a status improving mechanism. Being associated with high status, I mean, that's why we, get, we feel good about ourselves. That's why we feel pleasure, right? Emotions and feelings again. When we get invited to, hang out with the president of our university or whatever, like, just think about all the occasions that you all feel so privileged and honored. It was really, this fundamental little social behavioral goal of attaining status. Now, again, the reason that status is so important from an evolutionary perspective, again, is because it guarantees your survival and minimizes threat at some level. Again, it's complicated. Again, so it takes reliance from others, right? Because you're the people are seeking you, and it facilitates the other social needs, acceptance, connection, attachment. It's easier, you're more attractive, and so on and so forth. The problem with status, though, is that it's not always merit-based. We would like to think that, and what I mean by this is that we don't always, like in the ape world, it was merit-based. So if you were the toughest gorilla that beat every other gorilla up, then you were the alpha. Like it was that simple, right? And then if somebody else wanted to take the throne, he would have to beat you up in front of everyone. This is very important, in front of everyone, right? Because if nobody saw, then you don't come back and say, hey, I beat this guy and now I'm the boss. It wouldn't count. And this is what I'm saying here. The status is defined by others. Even in that case where it's merit-based, it's still defined by the others give it to you. You have to earn it in front of everyone. That's why social media is so damn important, because we always want others to tell us that we are better than yesterday, that we're higher up, that we're moving up in our status scale, right? Again, without the social perception, there's a problem. Now, the problem with this little, first, that we're obsessed with status because it just our human nature just is obsessed with getting it because it's such a fundamental way of increasing our survival odds and therefore our capacity to reproduce. We evolved to crave it with all of our little hearts. And the problem is that it's not always merit-based. It's based on perception of others. So that opened up the opportunity for us, apes and humans, to deceive ourselves, each other, about what status is, right? So now I don't have to beat the gorilla up. I just have to go to the gym and look like I can beat the gorilla up. And then people are gonna give me status, right? So I become all big, and then we look at these people and we all think, oh, these guys are probably super tough, right? They would beat anyone. Half of them wouldn't, and we all know that, right? They're scared. We paint ourselves to look mean, to scare other people off. Again, perception. We use social media to perceive. We publish a paper. What do we do with it? Put it on Twitter. That's because if we published it, and me and my mom is proud of it, not enough. People need to know, right? We get bothered when our program director doesn't send a congratulatory email to all the other faculty, letting them know that I got my $24,000 grant. Why? I mean, I'm here for the love of clients, right? Why does everybody else need to know? Well, because it's a status. That's what we're actually craving here. Well, at least Not always. I'm exaggerating, and of course, there is love of science. Don't get me wrong, but I just want you to recognize. Just look at academia, just like look at humankind, and we're still driven by the same fundamental human needs. Academia is not absolved of being human, and I'm emphasizing this because if you understand, I'm just gonna sound odd, that scientists are, that we were monkeys yesterday. You would have a better way to deal with academia if you just accept that fact that we're still this sort of, slightly removed primate from everybody else. And it's very fun. For me, it has been liberating. Now, again, the problem with this deception thing is that now we're fakers. We develop a culture of fakers. I mean, again, social media, just look at it. Like, we all know that those people are not that happy. We all know that all their coffees don't look like that perfect latte that we just put a picture on about. That we know that there's, I'm going to talk about my sister, but my sister and her husband in Facebook, they're like the perfect couple. And then I go and visit them, and it's like, what the hell? Like, you were in love yesterday. What happened? And it's like, we live in it. People post pictures of their books, and then I ask them about the books, and then they haven't actually read them or they understand. The point is that we deceive people, and we do that in academia, right? We deceive ourselves, we exaggerate, and we attain status that way. We move ourselves, and that's how people that are less deserving end up, up there, because they figure out how to manipulate this mechanism. Of course, that creates a lot of social disparity, right? Because now it's not merit based. It's about perception. It's about a whole bunch of other things. People that I think, from my moral background, do not deserve to be rewarded as much. I don't think anybody deserves to be 100 times richer than the poorest person in the world. But that's just the economy that we live in, because we live in a social world that is dictated by these principles. The point is that it creates a lot of stress. It creates a lot of stress in the real world, and it creates a lot of stress in academia. I apologize for not calling academia the real world. And we fall into this temptation that, hey, we also need to exaggerate. We also, again, we cannot be vulnerable. We cannot accept the people that we don't know, that we're not great at statistics, great at writing, great at everything, because everybody's just supposed to be great at everything, so that we don't share our papers with people, because we don't want them to see that we're not that great of writers, we're not that great of statisticians, we're not great at probably anything. We're doing our best to become good scientists, but because we live in this culture of deception where everybody's done awesome, that just brings, it makes it so hard to seek genuine help, right? So we find these clever ways to get little pieces of knowledge that are not just the answer to your question, because you want to get help without disclosing that you're vulnerable. And that's the problem with it. It just stresses us out. And and then it creates the temptation to all of us, because we're human, to also play the game and deceive and put the picture and exaggerate and put it on the TV of, oh my God, this guy went to Harvard. I mean, if you talk to me, in my experience, you might probably be disenchanted about it, but you don't know. I mean, I genuinely think that my current job I got it, and that line on my CV had the most weight, which kind of sucks, right? Because I think I have done 100 more awesome things, and that little line, just because it deceives people, right? It's probably is brilliant, which I'm not, got me a job. Now, I'll take it because I have a daughter I need to feed, but you see the point, right? There's these other things that are just so important. Now, I'm saying all of that to ultimately talk about authenticity. Now, authenticity is what's going to liberate you from this human tendency to deceive and to be suppressed by the social norms that affect humanity and affect academia. And here's where I think if you embrace this idea of authenticity, you're going to enjoy your career more. You're going to be more efficient with your time, and I'm going to explain why. And your odds of being successful are actually going to increase without sacrificing your own humanity and your own moral principles and your background, although acknowledging your own humanity. So let me explain what I mean by this. So authenticity, the way that I define it, is the trait, and it's not black and white. It's not that you're authentic or not authentic. It's a gradient, it's a progression. But authenticity is owning yourself completely, who you are, the good and the bad. It's ownership. It's about ownership, right? So this is knowing everything as much as you can everything you do, everything you think, everything you are, and why you're doing your real motivation, right? Because sometimes when we're deceiving people, the first people we deceive is ourselves. We convince ourselves, that running a marathon is not really to show other people that I'm awesome. It's really, I'm proving to myself that, whatever. And I'm like, how many people really want to run 40 miles? How many people do it in silence? Like if it was this really a competition against yourself, why do you need to do it in New York? If the point is riding 40 miles, hey, just for the God's sake, don't pay the money. Just go and run 40 miles and then sleep good at night because you did it. Bullshit. Right? And again, I'm generalizing. I'm pretty sure there's this awesome, genuine, spiritual marathon runner that does it for the right reasons. Or I'm not even saying I think right and wrong is relevant, but you know what I mean. Right? We all are doing all these things for something. So if you recognize, I'm not saying you don't do it, but don't lie to yourself while you're doing things. So the more you know yourself, your real motivation, so you recognize this humanity, then the more you know yourself, the more you own yourself, and the more you own yourself, the more comfortable you are with who you are, and the more comfortable you are with who you are, then you become the more vulnerable. You tell the truth. You tell what you think. Like, who cares if I'm undermining my little Harvard friend? Yeah, it's awesome. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't make me a better person, right? Yeah, I got lucky. I could tell you guys a story about that. There was a lot of fortune in that process, right? But how many people would tell you that? People would bank it. People would use it. But if you're comfortable with who you are, then you don't feel the need to pretend. You don't feel the need to deceive. And you don't feel the need to buy other people's BS either. And you recognize it everywhere. But here's the key thing. The more comfortable you become with who you really are, then all the energy that we put, because we put a lot of energy, and I ask you if you're interested in one thing, reflect on this. How much energy do we put to deceiving ourselves and others? Because we have these human tendencies that we decided to do subconsciously, by the way. If you take all of that energy and suddenly now you don't give a damn, or you give a damn less about what other people say and what other people are doing, and you dedicate now all of that energy to making yourself happy and doing the things that are meaningful to you, and you dedicate that to become a better writer, you dedicate that to think about better questions, better science, whatever you do, all of those resources, and I promise you, we use a lot of those resources to play that game, are now liberated. And the other thing, so now you have, just from an economical perspective, you have more time, you have more mental energy, you have more physical energy, you have more stamina to dedicate to the improvement of yourself and the advancement of your career. And now you're also more comfortable being vulnerable because you don't give a damn what other people are. You know who you are, you know how smart you are and how smart you are not. You know where you're at and you're good with it. You're at peace with it. So now you can approach smarter people than you and just be genuine. And then guess what? Other people subconsciously, we all are. When somebody's genuine, we naturally gravitate to those people. We just like them. They're effective. We don't know why, but these are people we want to hang out with. And you know why? Because they're less threatening. Because all of us, ultimately, we do sense. Some of us are smart enough and we just cognitively identify. But if we don't, we sense where people are being safe. We just live in a society that we have learned to tolerate it. We know everybody's being fake. We know everybody's exaggerating. We know everybody didn't read the whole book or the whole paper. We know that they're just feeding us information they just read from somewhere or listen in a documentary or whatever, right? But we liberate ourselves from doing all of that, right? And again, I'm not judging. Again, that's why I started. That's why I took so much effort to explaining this is just human process. The point is, now you get liberated. You have control over yourself, and now you really affect other people. And remember when I said you really want to make friends? I like to think that I have made actually my entire career, the most influential factor has been other people. People recommended me for this job. People nominated me for that fellowship. People gave me a scholarship at UTEP. People were just helping me and helping me and helping me. I have always think that the reason people help me is because I'm honest with them. I'm honest with myself and I'm honest with them. And I always try and what I mean, I'm honest about who I think I am. And I think, again, that's very attractive. So what you're going to end up in return is going to be more time for your career, and you're going to end up with the capacity to build stronger, better relationships. So again, it liberates you. It makes you more attractive. And I don't mean sexually, I mean socially to other people. You create also stronger relationships, attachment, connectedness, and then of course you become a better leader because people are just drawn to you. So now you have the capacity to really lead other people in the same way that you're leading yourself. So how do you become? I already told you, know yourself. So you really want to reflect among yourself. It's about self knowledge. It's about self acceptance, and then that becomes ownership. So you cannot own something you don't accept, and you cannot accept something you don't know, you don't understand. So the first thing you need to do is exercise self awareness, especially with things that big plans, big things that make you angry, things that upset you, things that cause fear or excessive emotion. Step back and reflect, like, why does that bother me? Why did that comment bother me? Or why does this make me so happy? Why am I so upset with doing this over and over and over? And if you are honest with yourself, you don't need to be honest with anybody else. You don't need to discover and post it on social media. As long as you are honest with yourself and you discover it and then you accept it. Keyword accept. You figure it out and then you accept it. You own it, as crappy as you think it might be. That's going to be the path to ownership and authenticity. And again, it's a progression. And at least from a personal perspective, the more authentic you become, and it fluctuates, by the way, you need to keep it up. The more authentic you are, the more happy you're going to be, and the likelihood that you're going to succeed is going to increase without increasing your scientific sense. So that's all I have. I don't know how I did on time.
You are doing great on time. That was a great perspective, Dr. Olvera. I'm just going to open the floor for any questions from the audience. Do you have any question for Dr. Olvera?
Did it make sense? I have a question to all of it.
Any question, guys? All right. I'm gonna go ahead and ask a question. So Dr. Olvera, I think it is an idea I thought about while you're talking about authenticity. It seems like if you are authentic, you automatically develop the thick skin, to take any comments or any feedback or any critiques, because now you don't really care what other people think about you, because you're kind of authentic. So
correct. Yeah, correct. So the more you own yourself, meaning the more comfortable you are with the real version of you, right? The more you're able to fight that human nature inclination to seek status, and to seek that status, obviously, through the opinion of others. Again, status does not exist without the opinion of others, right? You cannot go into the middle of the wood and be the richest weirdo inside of the wood. It has to be other people that validate that. This is the whole point. Status is in relation to others. So the more you don't care about status, and think about it, entire academia structure is based on status, right? Assistant professor, full professor, tenure track professor, everything is status in that, right? It's very primitive in that way. So we are all sort of stressed by it. The more people ask me about tenure all the time, and I'm like, I've always seen tenure as a consequence, not a goal. I'm doing my job. I'm doing it the way I'm supposed to. It's going to happen. It's supposed to happen. Now, again, I started saying you need to be strategic. I'm not saying don't be an idiot and just assume, but don't make it a goal. Even to my students in the PhD program, I know graduation should not be the goal. It should be the logical consequence of what you're doing. You're here to start your career. If you're doing it right, graduation is going to happen like by itself. But the same thing here, right? If you liberate yourself of trying to convince other people that you're awesome, then your plan becomes completely different. It's completely focused on the real science and in your self-improvement, right? All the goals to convince other people of anything completely go away. And ironically, those things happen, but as a byproduct of you doing what you're supposed to be doing.
That's a great answer. Any other question from the audience?
Yeah, they're probably hoping for for the R script to be sort of explained. I apologize. I
Yeah, it's fine.
completely
That's
went
fine.
sideways on all of you.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna close the session.
We have
Oh,
a
all right.
question in
Yes,
here.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay. You can go ahead from there. They can hear you. Can you hear us without the podium mic on? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Olivera. It's a very nice talk on authenticity. So before coming to this talk, my perception about the title of this today's speech is like, I thought like probably you're focusing towards the experiments, the authenticity of the results, reproducibility. That's what I was perceiving. So do you have any session on those things? Like, for example, if I try to be more accurate in my research results, I might also keep on trying to be more perfect, and I might not achieve things in timely manner. So that was so probably I thought the term authenticity, you are meaning about the way we do the science or something. So do you have any comments on those things?
I think, yeah, they're obviously in a sort of different part of the spectrum, but they are associated in a way. I mean, what you asked is a complex question in the way you're framing it, but I do think that if you are an authentic person in this sort of general, broad perspective that I'm proposing, right now, very fundamental way, I do think that you actually, I have seen this in my career, and I apologize to put myself as an example, but it's just the most logical, honest way to give you an example is that I have been more genuine, I think would be the word, on my own research. So let me give you an example. When I was younger, my PhD student in my postdoc years, I was more tempted to overstate the significance of my findings in my papers and in my presentation. And which I thought, should directly affect my career path, because I'm telling people, this paper is better than what it is, that the results mean more than what they actually mean. And now that I feel that I have accepted better the quality of my work and where I'm at, and of course I want to improve it, don't get me wrong. Now I write these very long limitation sections on my paper. And I explain, this data set is cross-sectional, or this experiment, was only with people from El Paso, and it has all these flaws. And once I finished it, I noticed that I should have measured this other thing. And I'm very genuine about, I'm very sober about what my results mean. Then that allows me then to really highlight what I think the value is. And in my case, I do a lot of very high reward stuff. And I say, but I just contributed a paper that scratched the surface on this very, very important question. And although it's limited, I agree it's limited, at least it gives a solid, genuine idea that maybe more research in this field should be done. So again, I feel more proud of my work. And in a way, I feel my work is more impactful because it's authentic, because it's genuine. And again, it liberates me from this anxiety of how do I explain these results with highlighting all of its flaws. Now I'm the one highlighting them. And then, of course, then there's papers that after I pass them through the limitations screen, maybe they're not worth publishing. It doesn't happen often, but I have retracted from submitting papers after I thought about them. And it's like, is there really anything left to say? And I ended up not publishing them. I hope that at least partially answers your question.
Yes, thanks.
Is there any other questions from the audience? If there's no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and close the session. And thank you, Dr. Olivera, very much for your excellent presentations. Really appreciate your present today. And thank you for the audience for being here today. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.